Okay, so this is the guide for Basics 2. So again, I'll go over the vocabulary, any grammar, or anything that may have popped up in the Basics 2 of DuoLingo. So, vocabulary. Das Buch, es, die Frauen, haben, ihr, die Jungen, die Kinder, lesen, die Männer, sie, wir, and die Zeitung. Some of these look familiar. For example, die Frauen is, and die Jungen, they're plurals of die Frau and der Junge. So they introduce plurals in Basics 2 just as I think a way to show a conjugation for a verb, for some of the verbs you've already seen, because I think there is a whole other section on plurals later in the lesson outline. So we'll talk about plurals. As you could see, regardless of whether the noun was masculine or feminine, the article for plurals was die, which is the same as the feminine article. However, it's important to note the difference in the two, and usually you can tell based on the verb endings whether a noun is actually feminine or if it's plural. So, for example, in Basics 2, I think they use the sentence, Die Jungen essen Brot. Clearly, a Junge is a masculine noun, but because it was plural, the verb was conjugated as a plural verb. So, essen instead of ist, because in Basic 1 it was Der Junge isst Brot. So, really the difference, you'll note the difference in the verb endings. Other than that, the D's are kind of very, very similar. One is singular and the other is for plurals. All plurals, doesn't matter. All plurals are D. And something else I wanted to note with verb endings was the RCS form and how it relates to dirty das. So if you are trying to say a sentence and you're using a singular noun and you're not entirely sure which conjugation to use because you can't remember and none of them say dirty das, blah blah blah, der, die, and das are very similar to sie, and s, which is why there's a form called the RCS form. So all singular nouns are going to use the RCS form. Plural nouns are going to use the sie and sie form, which is why it's Die Jungen essen Brot and der Junge isst Brot. So that's an explanation on that. If you ever forget, der, die, das this rhymes is very similar to RCS. So think of it that way. Something else that Basics 2 introduces is the accusative form, or the accusative tense. This is one of the 4 tenses that I mentioned in the Basics 1 guide. I'm not entirely a fan of the fact that you're only in Basics 2 and they are introducing this, but they, I think, did it simply because the vocabulary. So the accusative tense is usually used for direct objects. Now, a direct object is a noun that is receiving an action. So, I ate an apple. The apple is what I ate. So it's receiving the action of being eaten. And in German, to say that, you would say Ich habe einen Apfel gegessen. Or, no, let's not do that. Ich esse einen Apfel. Sorry, I went past tense on you and didn't mean to. So ich esse einen Apfel. Notice how it changed, the noun changed, the article changed, I mean. So instead of being ein Apfel, it changed to einen Apfel. So articles change based on the tense that the noun is in. So the four tenses are nominative, accusative, dative, and genitive. We'll talk about dative and genitive later. Genitive is also kind of being thrown out a little bit. Not very many people use it anymore because the language is changing, as languages always do. And dative is being used more than as a substitute for genitive, but we'll still learn it. Hopefully, I think DuoLingo will cover it, but we'll get to that much later on down the road. But right now, I'm pretty sure the only one you'll need to know is accusative. And the changes in article for the accusative tense are der becomes den, so den, and then the rest of them stay the same. So die, das, and die are always going to, and the accusative tense are die, das, and die. And ein becomes einen, so you just tack on an en, and eine is going to say, I should say the masculine ein changes to einen, because the neutral ein stays the same. So the masculine ein changes to einen, and the feminine eine and the neutral ein remain the same. So in the accusative, the masculine articles are the only ones that change. So yeah, that's the accusative basics. The verbs in the vocabulary list are haben, which means to have, and lesen, which means to read. And they are conjugated as follows. Ich habe, du hast, sie hat, wir haben, ihr habt, sie haben. Notice that it is slightly irregular and that the do and the RCS form do not contain a B like the rest of the forms because the stem is hab, H-A-B. So slightly irregular, but this is also a verb you're going to use a lot. This, haben and sein are the two most used verbs, in my experience, in the German language. So yeah. And lesen is also slightly irregular, but all the endings are the same. And the stem for lesen is les, L-E-S, but as in haben, the do and the AZS forms change. They add a letter, which changes the pronunciation. So, ich lese, du liest, liest, wir lesen, ihr lest, and sie lesen. So that's the verbs, and that's basics too. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.